Hey guys, it's John again. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create something like this in Gimp. So basically what we're trying to create today is a type of jumper, also seen like a platform basically, seen in like Doodle Hopper and Abduction, a bunch of games online and for like Android and Apple devices. So you're going to want to create a new image, and for the dimensions, I made mine 144 by 32, so everything is divisible by 32. You can make it whatever you want as long as it's rectangular shaped. So go and create a new, like a rectangle basically. Just select the rectangle select tool, it should be top left of your tool options. Click on rounded corners and change the radius so it has a nice rounded shape of the platform. And then I'm just going to go quickly fill this in with a black color just as the base. You can rename it whatever you want. Normally I don't name my stuff if I'm working quickly, but for this sake I will name it. So we have our base as seen. And now that you have the base, create a new layer, transparent. What you want to do now is go to Script Foo, Layer Effects, and Stroke. And basically it's just a plugin that someone created. I'll put the link down below. And change it so it's 49 on the inside. It was just 1, so you have just a border. You can also use the Select Border tool for this, but it's not as nice as the Script Foo plugin that I'm using. And now that you have that, select your base. Make sure you have the new layer selected, and we're going to create a gradient. So select the colors you want. For this tutorial I'm going to be using, let's see, a nice green color. So select a lighter green and then a dark green so you can see the change in the hue. Make sure it's on linear and make sure you have it selected. It should be automatic. And then click and drag whatever way you want. I'm currently using Control and Shift held down so I have a line, so it's a lot easier to use, so it looks nicer. So click and drag however you want. I'm going to make it like this. Now that you have that done, if you want, it depends on the style that you want. Some people like dark borders, some people might not. Depending on who you're working with, or if it's just independents, they might tell you to have only a very light border. And I personally think it looks nicer on this, so I'm just going to change the opacity so it's a little bit see-through, so about 25%. And now the texturing. Now that's the harder part. So open up your browser, and I'm going to add scan lines, which, if you guys don't know, there are basically the lines on lots of pictures or signatures you may see in forums. And I want a diagonal scan line. Now you can do this by creating your own brush, but if you're lazy like me, all you have to do is just Google it and someone else has already done it. So copy and paste your image, and then I'm going to scale it down so it suits better. You can choose to do whatever you want with it. Oops. So now that I have it scaled down, position it over your graphic. Right click, go to Alpha to Selection so that you have selected only the image that you've made. And then you can either delete everything outside by inverting, which is basically Control I on your computer, or go to Select Invert and then deleting everything. Or you can do a safer way, which is basically you right click, go to Add Layer Mask, and go to Selection. So that way, no matter where you move it, no matter where you move your image, it'll always stay in this space, because you may not be able to see this, but there's a black border along right here in the layer selection area. And now that you have that done, go to mode, set it on overlay. Then you can change the opacity however you like. I'm going to change it to 60-ish, so we have a nice faded line. Now that that is done, go to textures. You can basically go to any place, like deviantarts.com has lots of pictures of textures. Maying, just free texture libraries, lots of them. Basically, just Google whichever one you want, and it gives you tons of pictures of different textures, and this is used for applying more realistic pictures and quality to an image. So basically, there will be pictures, random pictures of just like fur or metal or paints, roof, walls, stuff like that, and you take pictures of it and overlay it on an image and create the effects of like rust, for example, being on an image. Now I create my own textures, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to take a picture from the internet, because the internet is full of everything basically, and apply, I don't know, we're gonna have a metal, let's go with a metal texture, maybe a little bit rusted, and maybe like a plastic sheen to it. So metal, rust, plastic sheen, and scratches is what we're looking for. So paint effects and walls might have what I'm looking for, so would flat textures probably. So now I have just multiple ones, and I'm going to look for ones to apply to it. Now when you're applying a texture to an image, and I'll explain this later in another tutorial, you want to start with the basics. So you want to layer it on, so your most basic detail, like a flat wall basically, with just a little bit, will be what you're going to apply first, and then you're going to apply more and more detail, so it becomes more and more 3D. So let's see, I have pretty much basic sort of wall effect here, and then I have a little bit more cracks, and I'm going to apply some rust, and let's see, this has to have scratches somewhere. But we can just use something like this for scratches, and this will work too, even though they're large scratches, which is not really what I'm looking for, but just for this tutorial we'll use these. So start with your basic image, copy and paste it over, copy and paste it over, and then scale it down, because otherwise the detail will be too large for you to tell anything. So scale it down until, but it's basically just guessing, whatever looks right to you. And your colors, if you have, for example, like a really bright, say this was really red, and when you put it over, when you overlaid it over the image, it changed the color somehow, because sometimes that's what happens with the image overlaying. What you want to do is go to, it doesn't happen with all of this, what you want to do is go to colors, desaturate, go down to average, and once you've done that, you should have just a black and white photo basically. So I'm going to just add a bunch of different textures and the pictures that you've already seen. So I'm going to apply some of the rust on first above the metal scratches, because I want the metal scratches to really pop and be more 3D on the image. So I'm just doing one layer of rust and then the scratches, so the image has more like popping out and so you can see it clearly. And oops, resize. Then position it. you don't want it to be like, as you can see, just a blank, pretty much blank thing of gray, because I mean that's pointless. So position the image until you have different scratches across it, so it gives it more quality and like character to the image. And the rust, you're gonna apply that. Normally you apply that last, because think of it like you're applying a thin layer of paint to the image. You don't want to make a sculpture and put on a bunch of rust and then make the sculpture. You want to make the sculpture and then put rust underneath it. Wow, on top of it, so it looks like well aged and it gives it more character. And now that we have this, right click, go to mask to selection. Basically you're just selecting the image that you saw before, and then you're going to add layer masks to all of these. Just run through it really quickly. Then now that you've done that, you want to overlay it, all of these. Okay, so you can already see we have some of the image showing character, and I'm just going to show you what each of these added to do. So we have nothing really changes, then you start seeing more detail, and even more. I'm going to change the scan lines to the top so the image pops more, and then I'm just going to change the opacities of these. So this is your base. See, nothing really changes, and we get into the more detailed, and a little bit changes. So let's see. Yeah, that's really visible. So just mess with it. It's all about eye. So mess with it until you find what looks right. And yeah, that looks good. I'm going to quickly create a new folder, which is bottom of your layers. It's right here, and I'm going to name it textures, just so we know where everything is. You don't have to do this. Normally I don't do it, but just so this looks better, I'm going to do it. Oh, I forgot. When you're putting your textures into an image, make sure the thing is on overlay, and then change each one to normal. So you have a group of normal layers, normal pictures at different opacities, all on the same thing, instead of just having like the color, so everything in there is all color. Yeah, you'll see it when you try it. Now, change the opacities a little bit. Oh, scan lines. Oops. It's not cooperating today. Oh, okay. There, you can see it now. Mess this a little bit. No, it's scan lines. Okay. I'm just going to create 2 texture copies of the folder, just so that it looks better, basically, because I need it to pop more. Now that you've done that, so all your textures, you have 2 folders, the same copies. And now that I've done that, let's see what else. I want it to be plasticky, so shiny, basically. So this is tricky because you can't take the exact image and just apply it on and be like, bam, here's my image. You have to use different things. So I'm going to open plastics and glass at the same time. And yeah, as you can see, the plastics, they're not really reflective. Nothing really stands out, so you wouldn't really looking at it, you couldn't really tell that it's plastic when you apply it. So I'm just going to start with, let's see, some of the stuff doesn't even look like plastic. Okay, let's just go with lime plastic. Actually, no, change that. Okay, let's go with bubbles and with lines because they're basically the same thing. And the glass, we want it to be reflective, but we don't want bubbles in it. So just have like a normal sheet, pretty much. You can't really tell that there's texture to that. Then also some water, because sometimes water has a reflective surface that looks sort of like plastic. Okay, so start with the base, copy, and just paste it over, and scale it down like the other ones, then position it so right about there looks good. Then I'm going to go with this one, so that's slightly more character and definition to it than the other ones. And scale that down as well. Maybe a bit more. Then actually that looks good. Now we're going to take, doesn't really matter what you decide here at this point because it's just laying different ones on. I'm going to apply this picture and just throw it on top. And there we go. And just the lines, put that on top. Okay. And as you can see, the color is red, which we do not want because I was doing this earlier in my other video, and you could see visibly the red color change it, and that was just not good because I did not want it to be some weird throw-up-y looking color. So this is where the desaturating comes in. If you mess up too, and if you apply the layer masks and you don't want to go back and do all this and desaturate it all you have to do is just create a new layer, and whatever, if you want it to be, the texture is black and white, just make it all black, change the mode to color, then everything is black and white. But for the sake of keeping this tutorial clean, I'm just going to continue with what I'm doing. So I want you to saturate the ones that would cause the most change in color. Normally you can't see the change in the hues. We're going to mask to selection, or just alpha selection. The difference between these two is here. Oops. So this is your image that you created originally, and it's just your overly shaped rectangle that doesn't make any sense at all. You rounded at corners rectangle, pill shaped thing. Yeah. Alpha to selection. Basically, you have an alpha channel, which it's this grid right here. So if I was to create a new layer and just draw like a blob, and if I use the fuzzy select tool, what I just drew is everything that's selected. So alpha to selection is everything in there. So it's very useful for deleting and creating, like deleting the outside of images and a bunch of other stuff. However, with the background, alpha to selection selects all of the color. So if I were to draw something like this, if I did the fuzzy select, it still selects the same thing because I drew an image there. But if I were to go alpha to selection, I'd still select everything because it's all the colors. So when creating an image, and if you have a layer mask on some of them, what you want to do is go to mask to selection. Basically it replaces your selection with the layer mask that you created. And now that you've done that, you can go and apply multiple layer masks to your other images. Make sure it's on selection too. Alright, so now you can see the outside, it's good. Make sure these are on overlay. Okay, and it appears in my scan lines. Oh, okay. Yeah, good idea. Make sure that everything is on, and otherwise you're basically messing up. And now, just lay on the plastic. Okay, you see it got a lot brighter, so I'm going to take down some of these. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to take down this a bit. And the one on top, which does, yeah. Okay. This is what's causing the majority of the change. So just put that, you want it to equalize out. So, have these textures and everything else. Okay, you may not be able to see this, but the scan lines are causing dark spots to appear on the base thing, which is just the line that we did on the outside. So I'm just going to go and delete, delete the scan lines that are interfering with that. Actually, or you can just apply it on top. Yeah, that would work more than everything. Just apply it, just change the base strokes and it's on top. And that makes more sense, because you want the outline to be the outline of everything. Okay, so now that we have the basics, you still need to identify a light source and shadow. And for this tutorial, I'm going to have the light source top left, so the shadows would be naturally bottom right. So using the plugin Layer Effects, you want to go down to Inner Shadow, and basically what this is right here is, this is the opacity, so changing it shows how translucent and see-through the black is, or whatever color. You can change the color of the shadow. Don't worry about this stuff. That's a whole nother tutorial. Noise, don't need to worry about that. Blending, you just want it on normal for now. That's just the layer mode. The choke, don't worry about that either. Don't click merge with layer, just leave all this stuff alone except for distance, size, and angle. So once you have the angle, mess around with this because it all depends on what you want. So that is not where I want the angle. So I'm gonna keep on messing around until I find the one that works. 65, no. Okay, so the higher numbers are going on the top and the left side, so I want low numbers. Okay, that's almost there. So -44, and you can see it has the shadow right here. So I'm going to show you what would happen if I messed with the size and the offset distance. So your offset distance is 5, so it's 5 pixels from the border is all solid. And then the size is 12, so it goes 5 of just pure black, and then it starts to fade until it reaches 12. So, for example, it reaches more, and it gives you a more like rounder image. And as you can see, it gets lighter the more pixels it gets away. So if I were to change it to, say we had like offset distance of 10 and the size of 7, look at how black it is compared to the rest of the image, and the gradient change is not as subtle, and it's not as, it basically doesn't look as good unless you want hard shadows like this shows. So you can also go to filters, reshow inner shadow, instead of having to go to the script foo and all that stuff again. Change that to 5. Actually, we're gonna go with this 6. Okay. You can mess with the opacity. Doesn't really matter. That looks good. Now we want a light source. So back to your layer filters, and there's multiple different things that I'll do a tutorial on as well. There's glow, inner shadow like it showed you, patterns, the stroke that was originally used earlier to create the border, drop shadows, lots of stuff to make images more 3D and more professional looking. So we're going to add another inner shadow. This time it's going to be white because we want it to be the light source, and we want this top left. So earlier when we just used -44 as seen is bottom right, so we want a high number around 44, so 55. No, that's a little bit too much, so change it to higher number. Okay, almost there. 140. Okay, that's what I want. Now that we have that on 140, you want to make it better looking basically. So I'm going to make the opacity harder, so there's harder light being shown, and I'm going to offset the distance a little bit so that it's a lot harder looking image. Okay, and now mess the opacity. Okay. So that looks good right there, but if you want, you can also take these and put them on top and then change the layer to overlay. So it's more, it all depends on the style that you want. Whoops. But I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to keep it where it was. So we have it on top. Just mess around with it basically. It's whatever you want to do. Okay, so the image is pretty much done, yeah. So I'm just going to clear up some edges just a little bit, and yep. Now if you want to change the color, basically just go select your color. I'll rename this. Select your color layer and then just basically do gradient. I'm keeping the same hue basically, and just change it. So say I want to do purple. Change everything to purple, so you have the light and the dark purple. And then here we go. And there you have it. There is your purple. I mean, it's easy. Whatever you want to do. Teal, light blue. That actually looks pretty good. Okay. Now that you've created your image, you want to save it. So first you want to save it. Make sure you have the background disabled, because if you save this image as with the graphic on top of a background, whenever you import the image or whenever you use it later on, it will always have the background with it, and you don't want to see the background. You want it to be movable, so you can place it, import it into whatever game making creator you're using, or whatever coding you're using, or whatever basically, and you want it to have no background, so it's simply the graphic. So make sure the background is disabled so you can see the alpha layer, and you can see the grid in the background. Then you're just going to go to File, Save. Doesn't matter if you click Save, you're going to save it as something anyways. Just find whatever projects. I've already created multiple ones, as you can see in the right, and this one's green, so green tutorial, so what I'll save it as. And I don't want to save it as a PNG. You want it to be saved as .xcf, which basically it's the Gimp extension, and you can see that there's multiple extensions that you can use. And save it. And now you want to export it. So what I do with most of my graphic design is I go to select all, so everything is selected, and then edit copy visible. What this does, it copies anything that's visible, anything that you are seeing. So that way I have one image instead of multiple layers. So as you can see, I just have this one image, and then from there it's really easy to just change the colors depending on what I want to do with it, and a bunch of other things. It's very easy to edit, basically. And then you don't have to do that though. You can just export it only as the layers, and it'll basically do the same thing. So go to export. You can save them in the same name, doesn't matter. Make sure your extension, now this is where it gets a little tricky. There's a bunch of different things that you can export as, like brushes, patterns, raster, not rasta, images, even a vector, I think, but also Photoshop images if you use Photoshop. Basically the same thing for Gimp, although Gimp is an open source manipulation program. But there's mainly three ones, and that's the JPEG, PNG, and bitmap. Don't use bitmap. Never use bitmap. It was originally created by Windows, and basically it's a pixelated image, basically, is what you're looking at. Now, JPEG and PNG, I've wrote something on this. I forget the exact words for it, what they stand for. Basically, a JPEG is not the same quality as a PNG. PNGs were originally created only for photographs, so you want something high quality of a photograph. I mean, unless you want it to lose quality and look crappy. So make sure you always select PNG. And this way, when you save the image, dithering and a bunch of other things won't occur to it. So export as a PNG. Don't worry about this stuff. And then I'm just going to show you what it looks like all thrown on together. So, okay. Well, this will work. I'm just going to quickly make a background. Let's make it like purple-y. We're going into space. And I'm just going to throw in some stars. Making stars, by the way, is really easy. I'll do some tutorials on making backgrounds and stuff like that for video games or personal independent projects later on. But basically it just involves taking a really bright white spots and blurring it so you get the type of glow. You don't have to make just circle stars, you can make like crosses and a bunch of other stuff. Okay, now that we have our stars, I'm just going to quickly find the image that we just created. What we have. Okay, so as you can see, here is the little jumper thingy, and if it doesn't fit, if the size isn't right for you, it's really easy to just change. I mean, Gimp is very good at keeping the same quality of an image at the different sizes. And there you have it. You'll see what it looks like in coding later on, but just create a little platform for your game. You can also use this as a button. Say you wanted to create, like, I don't know, play button. All you have to do is really quickly create a text. using the font text tool and put it over and overlay it. Maybe add some shadow using your where is it? Inner shadow.